It's a special episode of Locked On Coyotes to close out the week. We do a network crossover episode, Locked On Coyotes, and sporting of Cori and Richie. We are going to talk with them on today's episode of Locked On Coyotes.
Your Locked On Coyotes, your daily podcast on the Arizona Coyotes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Robyn Leonia, Carl Pavlik. Right beside me on today's episode of Locked On Coyotes. I want to thank everyone for making this show your first listen every day. We are free and available everywhere you get your shows. And of course, that does mean you'll never, ever have to pay to access any of our content. We got a great show for you today. We got a lot of things to come up. We're within 2-week warning of the NHL Draft, so we're going to do a lot of that conversation, trades, everything like that. To help us with this conversation, we got Cori and Richie from the Sporty of Cori and Richie show. Guys, welcome to the show. This is a crossover I didn't think we'd get done, but here we are.
So what happens when you have 4 people to try and mix schedules, right? But thanks for having us. It's I'm glad that I think we're going to be able to talk about some a little bit more positive things here on this particular show, at least as the draft and free agency starts to get a little bit more exciting, which is nice. A nice change of pace.
Yeah,
we definitely had. There's definitely been a lot of depressing Coyote stories this season, and this is the fun, exciting future times.
Absolutely, there's a lot. There's a lot to get to. Like I said, we're within 2 weeks from the draft, and oh my god, like we've been ramping up draft content, and we've been super excited. How close have you guys been getting ready getting ready for this draft? Because with Coyotes picking 3rd overall and 2 additional first-round picks, that there's a lot to get to.
Yeah, it's definitely been a lot to get prepared for. Richie and I are not the biggest scouting people. We usually kind of don't end up getting really hyped for it until it gets about to this time this close, because of the fact that as Coyotes fans, we all know that a lot of things can change. A lot of things can go wrong. You can also not always count on GMs to do what you think they are going to do in these situations. I think it's going to be a lot more predictable this year than it was, in previous years with previous GMs. As we all know, Richie and I freaked out when there's some people that were drafted during certain seasons, but it definitely is going to be a lot more of a fun draft year this year.
I'm a bit concerned about New Jersey. No one seems to be able to give me a clear idea of what they're going to do. Like, I've heard everything from they're going to trade the pick. We're doing an SB Nation mock draft right now, and they selected Logan Cooley. Like, New Jersey is the biggest wild card, and the fact that they're just before the Coyotes, I'm like, I have no idea to really plan. I need to come up with like 5 situations for what could happen.
Yeah. Well, the good thing about where the Coyotes are is, from everything I've been reading and listening to from draft experts, the Coyotes are sitting in a good spot in that there are the 3 top players in this draft, and then kind of like everybody else. There's the excellent tier of your Shane Wrights, your Coolies, and your Uri Slafkovskys in your top 3. And so the Coyotes are going to get one of those 3 players if they sit tight at number 3 overall. And that's a good position to be in my opinion. So whatever New Jersey does, and I was talking to the host of the New Jersey Devils show on the Hockey Podcast Network, and I asked him the other day, I was like, I think he's always been on the train of he wants the Devils to trade out of that pick. But he said if they stayed, then he would take Slafkovsky at 2nd overall, which would leave the Coyotes more than likely to take Logan Cooley, which I think kind of getting ahead of the train here. But at least from my opinion, I'm all in on Logan Cooley from here on out. I think I kind of have been ever since the draft lottery.
Yeah, I've been also seeing too, like updated rankings and stuff like that as we get within to this point of the before the draft, and some people even have uh, Logan Cooley, like I think the Athletic and Chris Peters and a few other have Logan Cooley at the number one potential pick. Like there's like so like no like so Shane Wright is no longer the consensus number one. Logan Cooley has actually like inserted himself into a couple of the rankings there, and that kind of scares me a little bit. It's like, okay, now there's going to be a lot more people putting their eyes towards that.
I mean, I think either way, how this goes down, it's not going to be anything bad for the Coyotes. Like I was saying, in the situation where you had Chychrun, you weren't sure what his little ability to use his stats would really pull out. Whenever I was kind of alluding to it earlier, but what I was talking about earlier is when he picked Barrett Hayton, I think Richie and I may have had our heads explode at those exact moments because of the fact that why he made that choice in using his stats was very confusing to us at the time. But at the same time, none of his choices, as we could tell going forward, really made any sense. In this situation, no matter what, the Coyotes are going to benefit from it. And I have a lot more faith in Armstrong in the fact that no matter where he ends up, he's going to end up being able to either choose from a good batch of players or is going to be able to trade it for something that he thinks is worthwhile. I really hope that's not the case, just because of the fact that if they're really trying to build this team, they're trying to turn it into, like a Colorado 2.0 or a Blues 2.0, hopefully better than how the Blues ended up panning out. I'm really kind of hoping more on the Colorado side, to be honest with you. But if they're going to be doing that, then they need to have these superstars that they're really going to build off of. And so this could be the first chance to be able to get one of them starting out and then being able to build off of it from here on out, especially with so many second round picks. They can use those for more trading options, and they have a lot more to waste. So I would really prefer them to be able to choose one of these top players and then just be able to kind of coast on something and make us not have to really have an anxiety attack about something for the first time in our entire fandom.
That would be nice to go through a draft and just be happy with the results. I can't remember the last time that's happened. The Gunther draft. Like last year was pretty good. I think that kind of established a good precedent. One thing I've been kind of thinking about is the latter 2 first round picks and maybe trading up like from one of those, throwing in a second if there's someone like really good, like 10, 15. What are your guys' impression about something like that?
The only way I would trade more picks like that is to go get an established player already. I don't think I would trade away assets like that to just trade up and get another unproven player. When Cori and I have talked about this before, and I always say the same thing, which is when we were going up through the draft lottery process, I'm okay not getting the number 1 overall pick, not only because we talked about the talent of those top 3 players, but because of the fact that they have all those draft picks. They have 7 of them in the first 2 rounds, right? So if you think about like a hit rate and you hit on 30% of those guys and you hit on 2 of those 7 players, like that's huge for a lineup of only, 18 skaters. Like if you can get 2 starters in one draft like that, that's huge, especially if one becomes a superstar. So I'd rather take all those 7 picks and actually use them unless they go get a proven player elsewhere who's already a proven NHL caliber player. And so, and from what we've seen from Bill Armstrong, I think he is very tactical about what he's doing. Unlike what Cori was mentioning with John Chychrun, where I felt like he got ahead of himself way too often. Case in point, Phil Kessel trade, Taylor Hall trade, 2 cases in points where he got ahead of himself. He didn't really have a plan going forward, where Bill Armstrong has a plan. He wants to execute it. He's going to use all 7 of these picks, and he's going to use those assets to get this team better. I just think giving up some of those assets to try and get another unproven player just isn't the right move to make in a draft this year, where yes, the talent pool is nice, but again, from what I've read, it's once you get past those top 3 guys, it's kind of an even playing field from then on out pretty much.
Yeah, that's been the biggest the biggest amount of conversation. The reason why like trading up is the most difficult conversation to have, because like, is it even worth it after that top three, top five? Because 6 through 30, 35 could really be interchangeable. Like, we had a mock draft on the Locked On NHL network where both Connor Geeky and Matthew Savoy, pretty like top 10 prospects, fell out of the top 16. Like, and that's gonna happen, It's like, okay, like, no big deal though, because like, again, there's what we said, there's so much wide in there. But I'm with what I like what you said though, the difference between Armstrong and Chayka, because it was night and day. Like, just even this last year's draft, his first official draft as GM, you could just see the kind of mindset that he had. It was so different. You're like, okay, this is a little bit of a breath of fresh air here, and I think he's going to do the same thing. He even said it himself, I believe, that he wanted to use all 7 of the picks in these first 2 rounds.
And part of it too is he wouldn't really want to be trying to do anything that has to be adding any real veteran players, I think, into this, because you have to remember this team isn't going to be good for another like 4 years. So you want to be trying to get those more veteran players later as well. So if he can use these picks for whatever players he thinks will be able to fill in this roster going forward for a very long period of time, is going to be whatever is in his head, and it's whatever is on his scouting team as well, which is huge right now, because you still have to remember that so many of the Canadian leagues really didn't play full seasons because of COVID. They came back a lot later than the American ones did. I've never seen the OHL really that far down on lists of the best leagues, because of the fact that they really didn't get those players because they didn't think they were going to be able to be seen. But luckily, Armstrong spent a lot of time on trying to find people who are really good scouts for him, who would be able to find these players, even though the availability to see them and to really scout them is still not always the best.
Absolutely. We're talking with Cori and Richie on today's episode of Locked On Coyotes. We're talking drafts, we're talking trades. We're going to do a lot on today's episode. We got more to get to. And before we get into any more, though, I'm going to turn to Carl for a quick word from our sponsor.
So BetOnline is your number one source for all your betting needs and sports information. You can find all the latest sports development and league reviews and news, including this year's NHL playoffs and Major League Baseball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and more. And betonline.net remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. Are you following the Stanley Cup final? Do you think the Tampa Bay Lightning are going to come back? You can head over to BetOnline, and they are going to have all the information you need to make proper wagers. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check all your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, and golf. Head over to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts.
All right, guys. So I have another question to kind of pose, kind of stem from the talk about this upcoming draft. And we actually were guesting on another podcast before we started recording this one. We were talking with the LA Kings Hockey Royalty podcast, and they asked us the question, is it more worth going, trading up in the first round of this year's draft, which we've already discussed, or do you get one for next year where it's going to be a lot deeper?
It's looking ahead quite a bit. We know that the Connor Bedard is the prize for next year's draft, and then outside of that, I'm not too privy to how deep next year's class is. I think you guys are probably right that it's pretty well expected to be a lot better depth of talent there. So if I had a choice between trading up in this year's draft and trading up in next year's draft, probably next year's draft for sure. But like I said before, I value. I'm wearing my Super Bowl champion Rams hat right here. They haven't made a first round pick since 2016, and they seem to be doing just fine because they were smart enough in their allocation of talent outside of the draft to make it work. And so there's a part of me that kind of wants the Coyotes to do the same thing as well, which is like be smart with their draft picks. They don't need to value them as heavily as people think they do, at least moving forward. Obviously, with the 7 picks this year, I think you're thinking of a different scenario. But moving forward, I think that's something to keep in mind, is that maybe we shouldn't value our first round picks as highly as we've thought in the past, because for the most part, they're crapshoots, right? I mean, unless it's a Connor McDavid or somebody like that, like, we don't really know. You know what I mean? So, right, Connor Garland, right? He was a late round draft pick, and he's kicking ass in Vancouver, right? And I saw his name popping up on the trade block recently too. Throwing it out there, go get him back. Do it, Bill Armstrong. Bring Connor Garland back.
It has been fun to watch Vancouver just completely stumble after, shipping out the pick that was Dylan Gunther for OEL and Connor Garland. And now it's already like, yeah, we're going to get rid of Garland probably. Just, I love watching a team stumble like that.
He was probably the one that we missed the most too. I mean, everyone had someone that they thought they missed the most, but truly everyone missed Connor Garland the most, because the energy that he brought on the ice to that team was basically what held them together through that entire season. When someone who is like Connor Garland is the one that's showing the most fight and the most grit out there on the ice, that definitely speaks volumes, because of the fact that there's no reason why he should have been the one doing that. So the fact that he was and holding that team together said a lot to me, as, just someone who really appreciates the fact that, I mean, the first thing Anderson said when he came in was a really horrible, corny analogy, but he kept on saying how that the team needed to be like cacti and that they needed to be prickly. And that was basically what Connor Garland stood for on that team. And, there's a lot of times when you'd see Clayton Keller attempt to try and be that way. But again, the man tries very hard to be bigger than he is, but he just simply isn't that kind of player. So the fact that they traded someone who really exemplified that, to me, was kind of a big deal. And they ended up just finding ones that are a little bit more on the gritty side and not the best way afterwards to try and take that place. And I just don't think that they ever really got that exact same spirit of the prickliness after all of that.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Carl, do you want to bring up the full proposal though that we got though from Hockey Royalty? Because they offered a lot, and it's like it's like the farm and a half that they're willing to offer. Carl has the full details from the trade that they offered on the podcast, but
sure. So it was Alex Turcotte, Martin Carmiak, Tobias Bjornfoot, and the 2023 first round pick
for Jacob Chychrun.
I like Alex Turcotte has my eyebrow raised for sure.
Yeah,
he's their top prospect, isn't he? Or at least one of them.
He's one of them. He's like a top 3 prospect.
I didn't even think to ask because I didn't think he was on the table, but they said that within the past year, struggled with some injuries, and the team needs defense more than they need him.
Yeah, so if that's the case, I'm gonna look him up right here just real quick to see what his numbers were here most recently. But yeah, if you can go get yourself Alex Turcotte, he was drafted 5th overall just back in 2019. He plays center, obviously a need for the Coyotes. He's an American guy as well. And you go and get that first round pick too. Like, that's a big deal. And let's see, this past season, played 8 games with the Kings, did not score a point. In the AHL, he had 18 points in 27 games. So again, we kind of know how it takes a bit for some of these prospects to develop. And I think what we've seen from Bill Armstrong is that he's going to let these guys mature. And whether it be at the AHL level, at the NCAA level, or in juniors as well. And I think you bring Alex Turcotte in, like, that has me peaked. Like, if that's what the Kings offered, I'd be okay with that. I think that's a pretty fair trade. I don't know much about the other prospect in that deal, but when you're giving up a legit top prospect, former top 5 overall pick, a center, a position of need, I'm okay doing that. Absolutely.
Carmiak played last year in the OHL in 60 games, 44 goals, 42 assists. Year prior, he was playing in the men's league in Slovakia. Also played 2 games with the Ontario Reign, but another just high offense player. And, I could not believe that they were willing to throw out 2, what I would think, top 5 prospects for them in this deal because, we get so many proposals for Jacob Chychrun, and most of them are just like beyond consideration. I think, what was it? The Toronto Maple Leafs side wanted us to take a cap back, and it was like, nope, that's not how this one's going to work.
Not only that,
but-
they wanted us to. The Toronto Maple Leafs show wanted us to take Peter Mrazek's contract.
Oh, geez.
It's like, oh no, it's got to be money in, money out. So Peter Mrazek's contract makes sense, and I'm just like, no.
That's Toronto for you. They're just like, no, we need this deal to work for us. It doesn't matter what you need. We need to come out the winners.
Yeah, another name too that came up with the Kings potential Kings deal was for a defenseman in Brock Faber, and defenseman, of course, another need that the Coyotes need. And so it's like, the fact that they're willing to give out, like they just threw out almost every single one of their top 10 prospects. It's like, oh, we could do this person, and it's like, you guys really want Jacob Chychrun, don't you?
Cori, what do you think about that trade?
It's, for me, like, obviously I would probably take it, but in the fact that it's so funny to me, there's a few different things in this. I was literally just sitting here listening to you guys because there's a few different things that's funny. One, the Kings, where they are dangerous and where they are now, and why I was Richie can attest to the fact that I went on a complaining spree every single time it was brought up that we were moving to the Central. But the one reason why I was kind of okay with it is because of the amount of prospects that were moving up in the Pacific Division, because of the fact that the Kings in particular have a lot of really great prospects, and that's what they have for their future. So the fact that they're kind of just wanting to toss a lot of those out there, it's just kind of like, you really don't care much about your future, do you? But then when it comes to Jacob Chychrun, he has so much value when it comes to being here, because of the fact that you have to remember there is going to be, some hype over the fact that they're going to be playing in such a small stadium, and that they're going to be able to actually you're going to be able to see all of your favorite players really up close. But they still need to have someone that you can really grasp onto as a fan. And Jacob Chychrun has always been that for quite a while now. It's been he's very friendly. He's relatively good looking, all of these things that really are marketable outside of him being a good player. So it's hard for me to see him go if he does end up going at any point, because of the fact that this team does need a marketable side of it. As you've been able to, like us, have to deal with all of the trolls online, you need to be selling every single ticket that you can sell in ASU's arena. It's just how it is. Yeah,
if they don't sell every ticket at the arena, someone's going to get fired. Probably a few people are going to be fired. I did group ticket sales for a while. I talked to some ticket sales people at Gila River Arena, and yeah, there's someone's job to make sure that is sold out, and it should be pretty doable. If they don't, people are going to go. But I agree. I don't see a need to really trade Chychrun. It's always seemed like people more from the outside, or the national media is really pushing this narrative that Chychrun's on the block. And I'm never really sure how much it is. I do think that if he sticks around, Bill Armstrong needs to talk with him and be like, hey, we want you to be here long term, because it seems like he's getting mixed signals, if anything, right now.
Yeah, I mean, I was Cori and I time after time, anytime anybody would bring this up on our show during the season, we always say, you're crazy. They're not trading Jacob Chychrun. And then I changed my tune once Jacob Chychrun spoke on his exit day. And from what he said, and you read between the lines, it sounded like somebody who was frustrated by his name getting floated in rumors so often. And I don't know where those rumors started, if they came from the team, et cetera, if there was other teams just floating it out there to try and dangle the carrot to try and get the Coyotes to trade him. Who knows? But I believe once those rumors came into public view, I think he clearly was upset by that. And you could tell that from what he said after on exit day. I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but you could tell as somebody who had more than likely played his last game here in Arizona, not only because of the trade rumors, but also because of the direction of the team and him having to go through a rebuild. And I believe he did say he wants to play for a winner, and I don't disagree with him there. Right, he's in his mid-20s and wants to go during the prime of his career now. And does he want to waste 3-4 years in the middle of his career playing on a team that's not going to make the playoffs? I don't think a lot of players want to do that. So it's unfortunate, but I think we're getting to the point where it's a player who clearly just doesn't really want to be here long term, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah, and one of the other things too that I was looking at in terms of that potential for a trade, that if the Coyotes want to do it, and if Jacob Chychrun really wants to wants to be like, okay, let's get me out of here, for the Coyotes to have more leverage, they do it now, because then the no trade clause comes in, and then all of a sudden the list is a lot shorter, because in this case there's a lot more free range with them right now.
Well, the other thing that's always kind of interesting in all of this is you have to remember that a lot of it still, as much as the NHL is trying to change a lot of its narrative and its dynamic, a lot of it's still an old boys club. So you don't know how much of things are being said and voiced around as just being able to see what they could get from him and what it would look like in that landscape. And, if putting him out there could be a way to leverage as something else. But so you always have to remember there is a lot of times a game being played, and it's a lot of times at the risk of the player themselves, because of the fact that, it's making him look good and it's making him beneficial right now. And it could be great for the team in the long term if they were able to get something really great for him. But it's also just kind of a bad business part on the part of trying to keep your players here, when all we're hearing is the fact that people aren't going to want to come to Arizona because you guys are playing in a very small arena. So it's also an interesting look on the team that way as well. So it's very complicated, I feel like, more than people actually give it credit for.
Yeah. And it's definitely like, I think one of the stories I heard was Chychrun was really upset when Dvorak was traded. And that also needs to be a concern. Like, what is the Coyotes blue line going to be? Who is actually going to be leading it next year, if not Jacob Chychrun? Shane Gostisbehere, I think. Connor Timmins, and then what, are they going to have just a bunch of AHL guys again? Are they going to be acquiring veterans? I really don't know kind of what the team looks like without Jacob Chychrun, because I don't know what the team's going to look like next year. Like, Bill Armstrong has so much work he needs to do. Like, getting rid of a player, like, I feel like unless he really needs to, then he probably just shouldn't.
Absolutely. Let's shift a little bit of focus, because one of the things I do want to bring up too before we run out of time for this show is we're now a few weeks removed from that city council meeting. Coyotes moving to get to the next potential stage in trying to get the actual development with the big ticket to get built. How has that been going? Because I know, Richie, I was talking with it was I think on social media, it was me, you, and I think I was also back and forth with Leah Merrill on PHNX about how long the meeting was going and having the long night that we had
I watched all 8 hours of it. And I think, Robyn, you were locked in for pretty much the entire time as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it was, we had the Coyotes presentation was amazing. It was damn near perfect. Their lawyer, Nick Wood, was incredible. Like, I think we should build a statue for him outside of the new arena, in my opinion, because of, and especially like how he went after, like a little bit later on, went after Sky Harbor and was like, you losers, we have receipts of what you're trying to do here. I know you're trying to build that extra space on the runway and you're not going to get it. And he got like fired up about it. I was like, yes, go Nick, go. And so it was a great presentation, and I'm glad Sky Harbor got a butt whooping from Nick Wood there. And from granted, we all know that there are going to be a couple new members of the Tempe City Council. They're going to be sworn in within the next few weeks, I believe in July. But yeah, anytime you get a 5-2 vote on anything like that, like that's a pretty big deal. We know that most of the Glendale votes were not that lopsided. They're usually the Glendale votes were like 4-3, and we always had the one swing vote that was like, oh crap, it could go either way. The mayor and the vice mayor both sound like they're really optimistic about it. Both of them did a Q&A with Craig Morgan the other day that was really interesting, and so it's very positive as far as I'm concerned. This thing looks like it's going to move ahead, and it looks like it's. I'm pretty positive it's going to get passed because they came with the idea that there's not going to be any taxpayer liability. And anytime you hear that as a city council, your ears perk up and you go, this isn't going to cost us anything. This is great. And we get 15,000 people there on a regular basis, 2 or 3 nights a week. Huge, absolutely huge. So granted, it's probably going to be, it took 9 months to go from when the Coyotes first issued their proposal last year from, I believe it was back in September, until June. So it was a 9-month process just to get to the vote, to get to the negotiation process. So I can't even imagine how long the negotiation process is going to take now. So I don't know. I believe from what the mayor and vice mayor both told Craig is that they want to get it done before the end of the year. So that's kind of our timeline at the moment. They want to get it done, in that December range. And so hopefully that's the case.
Cori, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, it was a very interesting start to finish. Like Richie had said, and it's really funny, I really enjoy being on the world that is the Arizona Coyotes Twitter during all these situations, because I mean, you go from everything between, like, what was it, Richie? There was diapers that were talked about at one point.
Yes.
To people thinking about noise complaints. A lady wearing a whole thing on her chest that just says no on it. Like, the weirdest things come out whenever they have these city council meetings. And if you remember the Glendale ones, you definitely remember the weirdness that's ever come out in them. The one thing that was really cool and different about this one, though, I felt was really the fact that you actually had Arizona Coyotes show up there and be able to speak. They didn't really say much. Like, Clayton Keller just kind of gave his short little spiel, and then and then everyone else just kind of looked with like deer in headlights. But it was nice to at least see them there. And it was also really nice because you had so many things that were being offered to Tempe that Glendale never was offered. So, they're offering them a draft. They're offering them an all-star. They're telling them that there would be a no move clause for 30 years. They're also telling Tempe that they would be helping them with random, even the guy that was like, for a beautiful Tempe or whatever, I don't know. There's a lot of different government things that I didn't even know existed. But the guy that runs the beautification of Tempe was talking about trees, all the way down to the trees that they'd be planting and things that they would be cleaning up. I mean, you'd think them cleaning up a literal heap of trash would be enough. But the fact that they're, going to be making their tickets available for the light rail, and they're going to be doing something with also like a car or shuttle service to try and help with parking and the traffic and all of that, because I mean, Richie and I remember very vividly trying to get to ASU football games and sitting in traffic for 10 years. So we definitely know the pain of it, but they're trying to fix all of that and do all these things and help with affordable housing. There's no way that it looks bad on them. Even when they would bring up their issues about, like, what about Mill? What about Mill? Richie and I were saying in our podcast, we think Mill will benefit probably the most from this because of the fact that everyone in Arizona, we all think, oh, well, Mill's a place for college students. Well, people from outside of here, they think, oh, this Mill place, it's really cool. I've always heard about it. And then they go and they party there. I went to an all-time low concert and they were bragging about how they went to Mill before they went, before the concert that night. And it was baffling to me. And I was thinking, this is a massive money grab for a place like Mill, who's been dropping bars like crazy since COVID, and even a little bit before that. So I don't understand why anyone would really be against this, other than the fact of you definitely are going to be against it if you're Phoenix or if you're Sky Harbor, because it's going to affect both of them in a negative way.
Yeah, I was gonna say I can't think the last time I went to Mill other than to pregame before a concert. And my favorite bar on Mill, Rulabula, is closed down during COVID, so I have no real reason to ever go to Mill again. But maybe something in the new entertainment district can be my spot.
I'll say I've only been to Mill once, and that was about almost 2 weeks ago, because I went up there because I'm planning to move to Phoenix from the Tucson area. I moved to Tucson, moving up to there from Tucson in about a couple months from now. So I started scouting out the area and being like, all right, what can I do? I was tired. I was like, all right, I'll just go stop at Mill for lunch or whatever. And yeah, I mean, like, it was a really, really easy location. Like I went from, like, drove by the Coyotes potential building spot. I'm like, wow, it is really close. Like, I don't see, like, why would it be a negative thing? Because, like, you could walk there.
Oh, 100%. You could completely walk there. When people are complaining about traffic, I'm like, wait, people can go and get drunk and then just walk over to the stadium. Like, how does that, or the arena, how does that make any sense that you would be complaining about that when I'm not kidding you when I tell you that I got really drunk on Mill one night and I really wanted Taco Bell. So I went all the way through ASU campus to the other end to get Taco Bell. If you are drunk, you will walk whatever the distance is needed. And that one isn't even a far walk.
Yeah, I love the walking, like everyone walking together, like parading towards the arena too. That's a cool experience. I got a chance to do that once or twice during the Stanley Cup playoffs when the San Jose Sharks were in it, and I went there a couple times because, again, that's where I grew up, and that's a cool experience. Everyone walking from like downtown or like a bar district to the arena, like that's a fun experience. And if you can get that kind of atmosphere going, like a lot of people walking from Mill and parading over to, that Rio Salado spot, like that's just perfect.
Yeah, I did junior year at ASU. I lived basically where the arena is going to be, which now looking back, I'm like, wow, I lived by a garbage dump. That's fun. But yeah, we used to walk to Mill all the time. And more importantly, we were able to walk home from Mill because it's easy to go walking to the bar. It's hard to stumble back home from the bar. And it is definitely within stumbling distance. I'm in Phoenix right now, so I'm just excited about the light rail. I want to just never have to drive to a hockey game again. I want to get on a train, have a beer, and then get on a train back. Don't have to worry about cops or anything.
And your ticket will work for it.
Yes. It'll be so that's my favorite part, just being close to the light rail, not having to drive, because that's definitely a thing. Like driving to Glendale was always horrible. Everyone hated it. Like there was always construction at some place. Even if you're taking surface streets, it still sucks to drive to Westgate.
I worked for the team and I had to go from my day job to my night job there. And it took me 2.5 hours to get there from Scottsdale. 2.5 hours from Scottsdale because of rush hour traffic.
Yeah. That's as long as it takes me to get there from Tucson. God damn.
Yeah.
Anyways, though, we are running out of time. Did you have anything else? Last thing to add, Carl?
No, it's good. I was going to go out on a tangent about traffic, but everyone who's listening knows about rush hour traffic in Phoenix.
Yeah, that's fair. But we are running out of time. We really appreciate you guys for coming on. We do just like to spend the last couple of minutes to leave an open floor for you guys to kind of let our listeners know where they can find you, where they can listen to you guys, because you guys also have your podcast, and just anything else you'd like to share.
You can go ahead and follow us on the Twitter machine at Cori_Richie Show. You can follow me at rflores91 on Twitter. I was tweeting about, I went back on YouTube and I found clips of former Phoenix Suns first round draft picks. And I tweeted those out earlier on Thursday night when we were recording this. Great time machine. If you want to do that, you can go take a look at the fact that the Phoenix Suns once took a guy named Dragan Bender, who is no longer in the NBA, 4th overall back in 2016 or something like that. Anyway, I digress. Thanks for having us on. I'll let Cori give her spiel in a second. I'm going to go listen to Taylor Swift's new single, which just dropped while we were recording. So thanks for having us on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and you can follow me on Twitter at Cori Nicole 2 E's. And, you can always listen to Richie and I on Sport with Cori and Richie on basically anywhere you listen to podcasts. We used to do all sports, which is why it was sporty, and then we got picked up by a hockey podcast at work, and it was our favorite sport anyway, so we just focused on the Coyotes after that. I always feel like I need to explain it just because it seems a little weird off the bat that we did do something more Coyotes related, but yeah, so if anyone liked us and wants to give us a listen, but thank you guys so much for having us on here, because it's been absolutely a ball. It's nice to be able to go on a podcast that actually isn't someone who's against the Coyotes, but is actually also covering the Coyotes. Feels very weird and awfully like uncomforting and comforting at the same time, because I'm just not used to it, but it's really nice for a change.
Absolutely. We really appreciate you guys coming on. We actually had an absolute blast as well. But that's it for today's episode of Locked On Coyotes. If you like what you heard, don't forget to leave a review, like, comment, subscribe if you have yet to already. We're available everywhere you get your shows, including on YouTube. Don't forget to interact with us on social media. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/LockedOnCoyotes, on Instagram at LockedOnCoyotes, and on Twitter at LO_Coyotes. I am personally at Robyn_Laniel. That's Robyn with the Y _LEANL. Carl Pavlak is Carl Pavlak FFH. You can interact with us, ask a question you might have. We might answer right back or on a future episode of the Locked On Coyotes podcast. Thanks again, everyone, for listening to today's episode. Thanks again to Cori and Richie for joining us. Hope you get to staying safe out there. Hope you get to staying healthy and cool. It's really hot out here in the Arizona time. Don't forget to howl on.